I'm Dean, I'm the dad.
I'm Laura, I'm the mom.
And I'm Arthur, I'm the son.
And together we are...
Family Plot.
Very nice, very nice. Let's get that housekeeping out of the way. Couple of things. We got Patreon. And if you want to help us out, Patreon's a good way to do it. It's a monthly donation. We have $1 and $3 levels. Now remember, this month, if you get a $3 level, you're
supporting the girls.
You are supporting...
which would be me and Lexi, I guess.
Yes. Because me and Arthur are on the boys' side, and if we get $1, that's ours.
And whichever one has the most people join the Patreon, there will be a super secret surprise prize.
Yes. Now, if you cannot do a monthly donation, which we get and understand, you can always do a one-time donation of $1 or $2 through Buy Me a Coffee. If you enjoy the show, please share it on social media.
Share it with friends.
Share it with family.
With everyone. And if you don't enjoy the show, please keep it to yourselves.
If you don't have anything nice to say,
don't say anything at all.
There you go.
What are we talking about tonight? Well, tonight we revisit the East End of London. We've been there a couple of times. As we visit the Kray twins, a pair of twin brothers that ran an organization they dubbed the Firm, that dealt with murder, racketeering, and so much more in 1960s London, as we go full mod in this historical true crime episode of the Family Plot Podcast.
So, you're going to tell us about the Krays, and you insist that they are not where the phrase cray came from because it's spelled differently. Is that correct?
K-R-A-Y.
Okay.
So the Krays were born on Steen Street in Haggerston in London's East End in 1933. On October 24th, 1933, Reggie Kray was born around 8 p.m., and his identical twin brother Ronnie was born about 10 minutes later to Charles David Kray and his wife Violet Annie Lee. They had an older brother named Charles James and an older sister who had passed in infancy.
Aww.
Charles and Violet were East Enders through and through. Charles was from Shoreditch, while Violet was from Bethnal Green. The East End at that time long had a reputation of being poor and crime-ridden, much of that stemming from the late 1800s and the crime being rife in that area. But at this point, much of the violent criminal activity had moved north and west. Still, reputations die hard, as anyone who lived in Independence while it was the meth capital of the world can attest.
Me.
The father was what they called a rag and bone man, which meant a junk collector / seller, who had a reputation for spending more time in pubs than he did at home.
Well, I can't imagine you made much money that way.
Violet, on the other hand, was the matriarch, in charge of the family, and she doted on her twin sons, becoming something of a minor celebrity among her Bethnal Green neighbors when they moved there in 1938 for successfully raising a pair of twins. Infant mortality rates were quite high among the working class in England around this time, and it was rare for both twins to make it due to adulthood.
Obviously, they were thugs even in the womb.
Now,
1 ate the other. I'm kidding.
Not only did both Krays survive, they thrived. Many questioned the relationship the twins and their mother had, thinking the trio were too close. Speaking on this later in life, Ronnie would say, "We had our mom, we had each other, we didn't need anyone else."
I see.
It is known that Violet spoiled her boys, giving them anything within her power to give. Many scholars point to this as the impetus for the boys' sense of self-importance.
So maybe we should take a few minutes and head to
Arthur's Corner?
Yes, I think we should.
Yeah,
I think we should too.
Especially if he's going to keep picking at his leg with a pair of tweezers.
Well, it relaxes him. Leave him alone.
It's how I live. It's not how I live, actually. It's just
don't get trichotillomania.
I already have it too late. I pulled out like chunks of hair.
Yeah, but you don't eat them.
Ew.
You don't have to.
You don't have to have
See, I thought
trichotillomania.
the actual eating.
No, the trichotillomania is just tugging out your hair, like in big chunks.
Well, it can, like, in Judith Marcy, it manifested in pulling out her eyebrows.
Yeah, like in eyebrow.
So weird.
Her eyelashes and the whiskers on her cat, which makes me feel bad for her poor cat.
I would never go there.
Hear ye, hear ye! Allow me to present Arthur's Corner!
Alright. Into the corner.
Into the corner we go.
With gun and camera.
Well,
maybe.
Well, maybe not a camera, but talking about a camera, perhaps?
Or cameras. Alright, everybody, welcome to the corner. How are we doing today? Let's start.
What would you like to start? Got to be starting something. Got to be starting something.
We lost a legend this week.
Unfortunately.
We did. And your dad celebrated a birthday, so...
That's fun.
Yep, I'm 54 now.
Happy Bedford's birthday.
Oh, okay.
I said at 55 I get to start going backwards.
Yes.
He's 54 now.
Which is why I said okay, because I'm not going to argue this with you.
How are we doing, though? Like, what today?
I'm hanging in there.
Yeah,
I'm trying to take care of your mom.
I am exhausted. Aren't we all?
Yeah. So, we are an amazing group of individuals who are just
We're trucking it,
through.
guys. We're trucking it.
Yeah.
You guys don't even know. I've been up and not you guys, they know I yap about it all the time. But I go up from the first floor to the third, all the way up to the third floor, twice in my day.
And it's not just one set of stairs. We're talking these are total full-on flights, like
these are flights of stairs. And I had cardio day today, so that was like double the fun.
Yes.
Anyways, how would we like to hear about the history of photography?
I would like to hear about the history of photography. I know a little bit about a little bit, but I think you're going to educate me on a lot more.
I sure hope so. If I don't, then this is going to be a very depressing slideshow. First of all, I'd like to show you my slideshow.
Oh, that's
Isn't
awesome.
that gorgeous?
Yes, very nice, Arthur. Arthur is a PowerPoint guru.
Introduction to photography.
Yeah.
Photography is a form of art, but instead of drawing or painting, it mainly focuses on taking pictures and recording. Photography was first branded by Joseph Niepce in 1826.
Excellent.
That
was when it took like 15 minutes for a picture to set or something, so they used it mostly on dead people. What?
When they initially created the photograph, is you literally had to sit there for like 15 minutes for it to do its thing.
Yeah.
This is like early on.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
This is Joseph's heliograph.
Cool.
I will talk more about that on the next slide.
Yeah.
Isn't that cool?
It is.
Deep dive into photography. Joseph Snipes. Joseph was officially the first person to take a photo, and I say that with quotes, a photo that was permanent, recording a view from his workroom, and created something he called heliography. And yes, he did make heliography. Isn't that fun?
Yes.
Which also meant sun drawing.
Cool. Now, is that what this is, or that's also something different?
What?
The picture that you gave me previously.
Oh, I think that's something different. That's called a cyanotype, which is similar, I believe, but I didn't go on the deep dive for that, because we didn't have to. We do have, like, a definition in our
Vocabulary?
like, bell work, our vocabulary, yeah. But anyways, he used different types of metal and types of rocks to copy down an image.
Cool.
Isn't that? And then this is an example of heliography.
Beautiful.
Like, it's a recent and more recent example, I'd say.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's really cool. Camera obscura. Camera obscura, dating back to the 4th century BC.
Wow, so before that.
Yeah, this is before all that. Is a natural phenomenon in which rays of light shine through holes and show a reversed image, which the photographer, and I say that in quotes again because, like, they're not actually taking an image, they're not, like, photo snapping it, they're, like, tracing over it, and they're making a photograph.
Right, like a light desk.
I can show you here, that's what they're doing right there. The image is traversing through there, and they're tracing over it.
Yep. That's cool.
Yeah. Yep. Louis Daguerre and daguerreotypes. I'm pretty sure that's French, but I can't tell.
It is.
Sounds very French.
It sounds very French. Louis Daguerre was a French artist and photographer. He was most famous for making a form of photography, daguerreotypes.
Cool.
Hold on. Daguerreotype is a direct positive process, creating a highly detailed image with a sheet of copper plated with silver. Here's an actual daguerreotype.
Excellent.
Very nice.
Yeah. Frederick Scott Archer, have you ever heard of him?
No.
And wet collodion process. Frederick Scott Archer was an English photographer and a sculptor. He made what was called the colloidal process. No, it's colloidal process. This process involved a prepared glass plate, which would be coated with collodion, which is what he was talking about, and made more light sensitive with other chemicals.
Ah, I see.
So I think that was kind of what you were talking about, like you had to wait a long time, because in my research for doing this, you did have to wait, like, a while, like 15 minutes for it to, like, process fully.
Gotcha.
George Eastman and film photography. George Eastman was an American entrepreneur who founded the Eastman Kodak Company.
Right.
Which obviously makes cameras. The Eastman Kodak Company was a company that was majorly involved with photography, as they had made the Kodak camera in 1888.
888.
888.
And that ties in with an episode we did on the Stanley Hotel, because Mr. Stanley, the owner, had a successful photography business that he wound up selling to Kodak right around that time.
That is
Cool.
awesome.
Yet again, the ties connect.
Yet again, it connects. Autochrome plates and Kodachrome film. Autochrome plates are a piece of glass that has a positive color transparency, allowing it to have bright and vibrant colors. Unfortunately, though, these weren't the best for, like, photography, because, well, they were, like, big and clunky. They were, like, actual, like,
Glass plates. Yep.
For the, images.
Yep,
so
too much.
It was a bit too much. On the other hand, Kodachrome film is a color reversal film that was lightweight, affordable, and quick with processing.
So what was the problem with that? There were no problems with that.
Unfortunately, it got taken off the market, though.
Why?
I'm not sure. Mostly people stopped buying it. I don't know why people stopped buying it, but...
Probably because their perception was there was better film on the market. And while that may not be true for photographers who are pretty...
The ones buying the film.
To the average person taking photographs, Fuji to them looks just as pretty as Kodak. And Fuji...
Yeah. I feel like a lot of photographers don't go into it, like, a deep dive of what films they, like, should use. I feel like they more of go with what they think is pretty and go on with it.
Well, and that's the thing with film around that time. Up to that point, it really was only used by photographers and artists. Now, once the camera became... what's the word I'm looking for? More common, and everybody used it, then people didn't have that business relationship with the products.
Right. Steven Sasson and the digital camera. Steven Sasson was an American electrical engineer and an inventor. Steven Sasson made the world's first self-contained camera for Eastman Kodak Company, which took place in 1975, about 87 years after the first Kodak camera came out.
Cool. Not until 1975, huh?
Not until 1975.
What a deal.
Right?
2 years before Rasputin's daughter would pass.
Here's
cool.
Steven Sasson. Here's the camera he made.
Very cool. So that was the very first one that did everything. So when they say the first self-contained camera, that's one that actually took the picture and processed the picture all at the same time. That's why.
Yeah, that's the digital camera.
Yeah. It's essentially like a Polaroid.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. So it is a digital camera, but not like we think of digital cameras now.
It's a different, sort
spit
of.
out a picture. It didn't digitally maintain the picture.
Right. In conclusion, cameras in photography itself have been around for many of years, whether that be in form of tracing from the reflection of the sun or a handheld camera, to even the camera on your phone.
Excellent.
Wherever there is art, there can be photography.
Yay, Arthur!
Yay, Arthur's Corner! Yay!
Hopefully my photography teacher enjoys that. I don't...
So is that the end of your corner?
Yes, that is. But I still have something to talk about.
Oh, go ahead.
Ahem. We moving on.
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay. In World War... Hold on. In World War II, Charles Kray Sr. was drafted into the military and went AWOL. AWOL. Okay. Becoming a.
Very good.
I'm taking a moment because you decided that it's.
I've just never heard it pronounced like that before. That was
AWOL.
Absolutely correct.
AWOL.
If you're just trying to sound it out, nothing wrong with it. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Becoming a fugitive and having very little to do with his family after 1954. So this wasn't too far from the Kodak camera making, yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean...
When he was arrested, the boys, like a lot of children and regular folks, were moved out of London during World War II and went with their mother to East Hadley in Suffolk?
Suffolk, yeah.
Okay. It was the boys' first trip to the countryside, and they enjoyed the peacefulness of it. The quiet of it. There was a hill known as the Constitution Hill, that the boys fondly remembered riding their sleds down in the wintertime. They were only there for about a year before Violet returned to London because she missed her friends. As the young boys began to grow into teenagers, their maternal grandfather, Jim Cannonball Lee, so called because he was a boxer in his prime and was said to hit like a cannonball.
That's not bad stock to come from.
Yeah, hey, no, it's not. That's actually kind of scary. I'd be scared. Anyway, encouraged them to box. Both were successful boxers, but Ronnie was the more aggressive of the pair, often getting into street fights. Some believe that he was full of rage because he was forced to suppress his bisexual tendencies.
Well, that would make you angry.
That would make me angry too. Yeah, what the heck?
Absolutely.
Let them date who they want to date. Ronnie was an avid reader and often read books about British war heroes like T.E. Lawrence and famous American gangsters like Al Capone.
So, why don't we take a minute and hear from one of our fellow podcasts?
Yep. Not sure which one it is this week, so we'll just have to listen and find out.
Hey there, friend. My name's Sarai, and I host a spooky, casual podcast called Freaky AF, where I tell you stories of conspiracies, true crime, and of the supernatural. So if that's your kind of shiz, come check us out. I'm sure we'll be great friends. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spreaker, and a bunch of other places. Or you can look us up on Twitter and Instagram. We're Freaky AF Pod. That's FREAKYAFPOD. Come get spooked, y'all.
Well, that was definitely interesting.
Yep. We'll have to check that out.
Absolutely.
That was an interesting podcast. Thank you for coming on our show.
Absolutely. So, the boys were selected for national service and met at the Tower of London, where history does not record if they saw any headless or bloody ghosts. If you don't know what we're talking about there, head back and check out our Tower of London episode. However, after a few minutes, they both left and began walking for home. When the corporal in charge tried to stop them, Ronnie Kray punched him in the jaw, severely injuring him. So, Dean, of course, did research on this, but could not find out how he was injured and whether he was merely knocked unconscious or whether he has sustained more serious injuries. However, the boys did walk home where the police arrested them the following morning and returned them to the army. In September, the boys once again went AWOL, or absent without leave, and when a policeman attempted to arrest them, the boys assaulted him. got them put in the Tower of London. Again, we're not sure whether they saw any ghosts or not. And Tower of London was mentioned in episode 161. But before they were there in the Tower of London for a while before they were moved to Shepton Mallet Penitentiary Prison to await court-martial. And once they were court-martialed, they were sent to yet another prison where they began to act out. Dominating the exercise yards, attacking staff, dumping latrine buckets over a sergeant's head. Wow. Dumping a canteen full of hot tea on another guard and setting their beds on fire, because why not? They ended up putting the pair in a communal cell, which they quickly escaped from and were recaptured. They spent their final night in military custody, smoking cigarillos, eating chips and drinking cider, all provided by their guard before they were transferred to a regular jail, where they served time for the crimes that they had committed while being AWOL. When they returned to their home, located on Valiance Road, they referred to it as Fort Valiance, while Ronnie Kray began to refer to himself as the Colonel.
And now let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors.
Wow, I feel sponsored.
Awesome. So let's talk about them building their criminal empire, because we knew that was coming.
If you literally spend your entire time in the military in jail because you won't stay in the military, yeah, criminal career seems like the next step for you.
Dishonorably discharged from the military, and now convicted of crimes as well, both men were removed from boxing, and now they turn to crime full time.
I mean, like you do.
They buy a rundown snooker club in Mile End, and from there begin to run a protection racket, while occasionally working for Jay Murray, a criminal out of Liverpool for whom they would hijack trucks, assault people, and commit arson. You know, like you do.
Basics. Yeah, absolutely.
The normal.
When a Maltese gang tried to get them to pay protection money...
Like the dog?
No.
Like people from Malta, they would be...
Okay.
But when a Maltese gang tried to get them to pay protection money, Ronnie attacked them with a cutlass.
Kind of classy, actually.
Using the money Jay was paying them, they would buy other clubs, building an empire of nightclubs while still maintaining their criminal ways. In 1960, Ronnie was imprisoned for running a protection racket, but that didn't stop his criminal ways. While Reggie was running things out in the world, Ronnie was making friends in prison. Peter Rackman sold Reggie a club called Esmeralda's Barn in order to stop further extortion attempts. While Esmeralda's is long gone, the Berkeley Hotel now stands in its place. Owning Esmeralda's launched them into low-level celebrity status, and anyone who didn't show the twins the appropriate measure of respect would pay the price for doing so. As the boys bought clubs in the West End and London, they attracted enemies, including rival gangs like the Richardson Gang, which was led by the Richardson brothers. Notice not twins, but brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Still, the Richardson Gang was going after a banker named Alan Cooper. The Krays took care of Cooper, and in return, he taught them to launder their money through dog and horse tracks as well as other ways to protect their illegal earnings.
Important skills to have, really.
Yeah. While Reggie did things his own way, Ronnie modeled what he dubbed the firm after what he read of Capone and other mobsters. He even had his barber come to his apartment to do his hair because he read that Capone and other criminals did that during their heyday in the 1920s.
Awesome.
So you wouldn't go to a barber shop, you'd have your barber come to your place and cut your hair.
Yeah, because when you've got that kind of money, that's what you do.
Let's talk about their fame, yeah?
Yeah.
In the 60s, the Krays became famous, mostly as nightclub owners and hobnobbing with lords, MPs and Socialites, okay. As well as having their pictures taken by famous London photographer David Bailey. Dang, I was on point today with that.
Yes, you were.
Slideshow. Whose photographs are often referred to as the blueprints for the swinging 60s. They would also be pictured with celebrities including Frank Sinatra, Jane Mansfield, Sammy Davis Jr., Judy Garland, Peter Sellers, and Liza Minnelli, just to name a few.
And Judy Garland is actually Liza Minnelli's mom, right?
Whoa. I think so.
Yes.
Ronnie Kray wrote a book called My Story, where he said the era was the best part of their lives. He said that the Beatles and Rolling Stones ruled pop music. Carnaby Street ruled the fashion industry, and he and Reggie ruled London. He believed they were absolutely untouchable at that time. The men were seen as relentless businessmen who had risen out of poverty of the East End to make themselves successful. Even their history of violence and crime were celebrated because that made them heroes to the 60s counterculture. They were seen as Jesse and James, like outlaws.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
So, all of this was well and good until there was a scandal, like there usually is. So, Tom Dryburgh was a gossip columnist and a member of Parliament, representing the Labour Party, roughly analogous to the U.S. Democrats, who in attending dinner parties thrown by his boss met Lord Boothby, a member of the House of Lords. So it was that later, when Dryburgh made an acquaintance of the Krays and began to date Teddy Smith, one of the Krays' gunsels,
yep,
he also introduced the conservative Boothby to the Krays. This led to Boothby, a masochist, and Ronnie, a sexual sadist, getting together for multiple dalliances. When the Sunday Mirror, the sister paper to the Daily Mirror, were given several photographs of Boothby and Ronnie together, the paper released an expose that, while not naming either Ronnie or Boothby, clearly implicated both men. The article referred to pictures they must not print and sexual implications of a gangster and a peer. Immediately, Boothby sued the paper and the Sunday Mirror back down, fired their editor, and paid Boothby £40,000, which is equivalent to several million American dollars today. One of the first things Boothby did was give £5,000 to Ronnie, but this also meant that neither the Conservative Party or the Labour Party was in no hurry to take on the Krays. The Conservative Party was in fear that the Krays would out Boothby, who was a vocal member of the Conservative Party, and the Labour Party, who had a razor-thin margin in the House of Commons, were not about to go after the Krays in anything more than a strictly verbal way, since they could expose Dryburgh's affair with Teddy Smith. Especially as Boothby and Ronnie had held several parties for important gay and bisexual men where Kray had hired rent boys, a slang term for male prostitutes who had sex with other men, as entertainment. Meanwhile, Ronnie was gunning for his own payout when a gossip columnist referred to Ronnie Kray in his column as a homosexual thug. The judge dismissed Ronnie's suit, calling the slur a fair comment, something that upset Ronnie greatly, and in front of a group of journalists, he angrily lamented how there was one law for the rich and another for the poor. Meanwhile, police knew about the Krays and their criminal empire, but doing something about it was another matter. Between cops that the Krays paid and the violence with which they conducted themselves, something that kept people from testifying against them, the police had no luck coming up with charges that would stick to the Krays. And now we should probably stop for one more word from our sponsors, just in case.
Yep, just in case.
I feel sponsored, and you probably feel a little slacked.
Yeah, a little. So let's talk about their continuing crimes. The American Mafia had heard of the Krays, and the Commission, which were the leaders of the American Mafia, whom we discussed in episode 160 about Murder Incorporated, reached out to the Krays, which is really weird because now we've touched on episode 160 and 161.
Wow.
Murder Incorporated and the Tower of London, and I did not realize those two would get reconnected in this episode.
Amazing.
Anyway, the Commission reached out to the Krays. The Krays dealt with Meyer Lansky and Angelo Bruno, famous mafiosi with strong reputations. Their initial meeting was supposed to happen in New York. However, American customs authorities refused to let Ronnie into the country because of his criminal history.
Makes sense.
Imagine that. What?
Customs was actually doing their jobs? Oh my gosh.
Well, this was 1960s.
Yeah. I've only gotten so far by that point. Anyway, go ahead.
Eventually, the Canadian arm of the Bonanno crime family stole several million worth of bonds from a Canadian bank. The Krays sent over Leslie Payne, a.k.a. The Brain, a corrupt businessman who picked up the bonds, took them to an English brokerage house, and sold them for a tidy profit for the firm.
Before he plotted to take over the world.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, Pinky and the Brain. Yeah. Different brain this time, however.
Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
Yeah. They did this several more times, though Payne began to complain, then said since he was taking the risk, he should receive more of the profit. The Krays disagreed, and so Payne quit. When the Krays threatened to kill him, Payne, a combat veteran, laughed at them. The Krays turned to disgraced American businessman living in London, Alan Bruce Cooper, to continue making the pickups and the sale. Now, this is the same Alan Cooper who taught them before how to launder money. So
they knew that he was good for it.
Yeah. It was around this time that the Richardson gang, the Krays' rivals, had a sudden reversal of fortunes. March 8th, 1966, at the Mr. Smith pub in Catford, the Richardsons got in a shootout with Richard Hart, who was shot dead. Now, Richard Hart was a member of the firm, just one of the boys.
I see.
Not the American singer.
Okay.
As a result, the police arrested every member of Richardson's gang in attendance, which was most of them.
Good.
So the following night, when Ronnie Kray heard that George Cornwell, a member of the Richardson gang, was at a local pub called the Blind Beggar, Ronnie, always the more hot-headed of the twins, went to see him. According to some, Ronnie was still upset over Cornwell's calling him a fat poof some years ago at a confrontation between the Krays and the Richardsons. Poof is English slang for a gay man.
Yes, kind of got that.
Yeah.
It's the noise I made, isn't it?
Ronnie walked up to George and shot him in the face, as one of his men fired several shots in the air, announcing anyone to talk to the police would be next. And let me paint this picture a little differently. It's not like this was talked about.
No,
they thought
came up and kaboom, and if anyone says a word, that's going to happen to you next.
Right, and the guy doing that just totally did it to try to protect his boss.
Yeah.
That wasn't planned. It was, oh God, my boss just shot someone in the face. Maybe I should discourage people from talking about this somehow.
Yes.
All right, any of you talk about this? You're dead.
This almost cost them their arrangement with the Americans. However, Reggie, along with a former American actor named George Raft, who had played a hitman in the 1932 film Scarface, were able to convince them that the fact that no one had accused Ronnie, and it showed just how thoroughly the public was afraid of them. In December that same year, the Krays helped Frank the Mad Axeman Mitchell escape from prison. Ronnie had been a cellmate with the man and thought that if he arranged Mitchell's escape, put a lot of information about Mitchell out to the press, he could force the police to parole Mitchell. They stashed Mitchell at an associate's apartment, but it didn't go well. Mitchell was a large man with mental problems. Keeping him in one place was problematic. Finally, Mitchell simply disappeared. The Krays were cleared of his murder, but one of their associates, years later, claimed that he had murdered Mitchell and dumped him in the ocean on behalf of the boys.
That was probably the safest place for him, to be totally honest, though.
Now, remember Leslie Payne, a.k.a. The Brain?
Yes.
Yeah.
The brothers were serious about killing him. They hired Jack the Hat McVitie to do the job for £1,000, of which he'd already been paid $500. Now, 2 days after the suicide of his wife, and we will talk more about that later, Reggie agreed to kill McVitie. McVitie was given an invitation to a party, and when he got to the address, he found Ronnie sitting in a chair waiting on him. Ronnie stood up, berated Jack, and cut him under the eye with a piece of glass. McVitie began arguing with Ronnie, then Reggie. During the argument, Reggie pulled out a pistol and pulled the trigger twice, but the gun failed to discharge.
Well, that stinks.
Finally, their cousin grabbed McVitie, who had a reputation for being a bit of a failure due to his drug habits and alcoholism.
Mm.
Ronnie handed Reggie a knife, and he stabbed McVitie in the neck, face, and stomach.
Wow.
Very publicly killing him in front of the gang, many of whom pitied Jack, who did not think he deserved to die. The 3 men assigned to dispose of the corpse couldn't fit it in the trunk of a car, so they put it in the back seat, and then when they went to dispose of it, the car ran out of gas in front of a church.
Oh.
So they locked the car and they left it, calling the Krays.
Nice.
The Krays were forced to get someone else to get the car and dispose of the body in the English Channel. Now members of the firm had seen or heard of Jack's death and felt it could happen. If it could happen to Jack, it could happen to anyone, and a lot of people were suddenly ready to talk.
They took it too far.
All right. The twins' life away from crime. Ronnie said in his autobiography that he was bisexual, not gay. In fact, when he was younger, he was interested in a girl named Monica that he referred to as his little angel and little doll. He was going to marry Monica, but he did take a long stretch in jail, probably the early stretch running for a protection racket, and she married her ex.
Aw, he was heartbroken.
Letters between the two show the feeling was mutual. There is some speculation that both twins had homosexual tendencies that they satisfied initially one another, something they would do on and off for the rest of their lives. However, Reggie married Frances Shea in 1965, and in 1967 she committed suicide, although Reggie told a few people that she had not committed suicide. but instead was murdered by jealous Ronnie.
Whether she committed suicide or not, keep in mind that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. You matter. Dial 988 if you need someone to talk to. Don't end yourself.
Right. They lived their lives mostly like they boxed. Ronnie was aggressive and uncaring, publicly violent. Reggie was a lot more thoughtful, more cautious, and smarter. The only time Reggie, quote, lost it that we know of is the death of Jack McVitie?
So we also want to talk about Detective Chief Superintendent Leonard Reed, who was nicknamed Nipper by friends and peers. Detective Leonard Reed was promoted to the murder squad in 1964, and his first job was to get the Krays. It was he who got the pictures that were passed along to the Sunday Mirror. However, in the wake of the suit, it was deemed wiser not to pursue them over these matters, especially as it was likely to tarnish the reputations of both Dryburgh and Boothby. In 1967, police related Alan Bruce Cooper on unrelated crimes, but he claimed to be an agent of the Treasury working to bring down both the Krays and the Commission. He claimed to know of 3 murders that the Krays had been involved in. By May of 1968, the police felt they had enough evidence to arrest the Krays and hoped more people would be willing to come forward if they did so. The Krays and 15 associates of the firm were arrested and kept away from one another to prevent any sort of collusion. Ronnie Kray's driver knew about George Cornell's murder, although he had not witnessed it. Others mentioned their cousin, Ronnie Hart. He was arrested and brought in, and he discussed Jack McVitie's murder. So the police had that. Many knew of the brothers' plan to help Frank Mitchell escape and knew the brothers had arranged for his death, but no one knew the particulars. The police took the evidence they had to trial. The Krays' attorney denied the charges and cited the criminal histories of the accusers. But at the end of the trial, the judge announced that the public deserved a rest from your activities and sentenced the brothers to life in prison with no parole opportunities for at least 30 years. An effort by celebrities to get the Krays released went nowhere, with 2 home secretaries denying the petition. Ronnie was identified as being psychopathic and schizophrenic and was transferred to Broadmoor Hospital, where he died in 1995. Wow, he lived a pretty good life for being in a mental hospital. Reggie was housed in Maidstone Prison for 8 years before being moved to Wayland Prison. Both Reggie and Ronnie were allowed to attend their mother's funeral under police guard. Reggie attended Ronnie's funeral and his brother Jack's, both in handcuffs. Reggie was eventually diagnosed with liver cancer and was freed from jail on compassionate grounds. He died 5 weeks later on October 1st, 2000. Sorry.
It's okay. All right.
Going on and on here.
That's something. Their brother's name was Charles, but it was Charles Jack, and he often went by his middle name.
Gotcha.
Now, the Krays are probably London's best-known mobsters, and they have appeared in multiple books and movies. In some ways, they are England's answer to Al Capone, and they are often admired by criminal types for the things they accomplished in their lives, just as many like that they went to jail, proving law and order always wins. Some have called them the dark side of the British dream.
I see. Well, they definitely had a very interesting history, for sure. That's kind of, I mean, there was a lot here. They got away with a lot of stuff, so, I mean, they definitely made a mark in history, for sure.
Well, and a lot of that was just how ruthless they were supposed to have been.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was just Ronnie. Ronnie was the crazy one. And I've actually talked with a friend on a fellow hit. Well, a new friend. They just started talking to us via Twitter. But
X, yes.
yes. Anyway, but they said that Reggie almost became a full-fledged boxer because Ronnie, while he was the more aggressive of the pair, Reggie was quieter, more laid back, more thoughtful, more studious, more careful.
Uh-huh.
And that's why he didn't have a problem until Jack McVitie. And I think we can blame Jack a lot on Ron.
Right.
Especially if Reggie wasn't lying and Ronnie actually killed his wife.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because now he's got Ronnie screaming at this guy, screaming at him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's got to get that pain out somehow, and he can't go after his brother, so...
Fair enough, absolutely.
And, yeah, and then, again, we don't know, but there were a couple of interviews with Ronnie where he said that he and Reggie both had homosexual tendencies and they had hooked up a time or two. So, is that true? I don't know. Ronnie, again, was crazy. And the MP thing, I should, it means member of parliament. There's, in British...
British lingo has way different...
What? I was going to say, British government is kind of set up like the American government in a bicameral house, whereas we have the House of Representatives and the Senate. They have the House of Lords, which is all people that are titled. They are Lord this, Lord that.
And then the House of Commons is people who are like are like people who get elected in, like they have to run for those official offices and all of that.
Right. So an MP is a member of Parliament, while a Lord is a member of the House of Lords.
Right.
And so, yeah,
That's like all I know about British government, and I probably screwed that up.
But yeah, and I mean, these guys were
They were definitely a handful.
Very much so. They absolutely.
Did you have any final thoughts, Arthur?
They were a mess.
Hot mess.
A hot mess.
But I will say this. I wonder if there had not been, because there was still a very massive taboo against homosexuality.
Yes, terrible. Yes, this is definitely when there was a lot of, well, I mean, the 60s and the 70s, like, yeah, there was
so
definitely in the United States we had, the hippies and flower children and all of that good stuff too going on in the 60s and the 70s.
Right, and this is also right around the time that Stonefront happened that we talked about in New York. So I kind of wonder if they had been just allowed to be. If they would have been less violent.
History had been different, yeah.
And Ronnie, I don't think there was any hope for Ronnie because he was. People said for a long time, oh, he's crazy. Oh, he's a psychopath. But he was actually diagnosed with it later in life.
Yeah.
That's why he got moved to a hospital.
Yep.
And then these guys were still so successful that from the hospital, Ronnie was running a protection business for celebrities.
Wow, that's wild.
And he was caught running it, and they decided to just let him do it because they had no evidence of crime.
I see. Crazy.
Kind of.
Yep.
So, I mean, they lived these kind of amazing lives, but they were really not good people.
They were really bad dudes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Although Reggie said and I want to say this was after Ronnie's death, he often wondered if he had put more effort into things that were more mainstream, if he might not have had a different life than the one he had.
True enough.
Like if he had put in more effort to be a boxer or some other normal.
Well, I mean, that's the same as anyone saying, "Oh, if I had, turned right instead of left, how different my life could have been." I mean, you can go back and look back on it, but you made the choices you made, kind of thing,
I know. I'm just saying.
I get it.
I kind of like Reggie better, but not by a lot.
I get you, absolutely. Well, that does bring us, though, to the end of our show, right?
What?
Yeah,
Luke, Arthur, you got all your...
They're crazy. They're just...
They were just crazy. That's all.
They are the Kray twins. That's their new nickname.
He thinks so, too. He agrees with me. They still say that that's where it came from. They just switched the letters so that they didn't have to pay protection money.
Well, they were both deceased by the time the term cray started being used, so it's possible.
Oh, I mean, the last one died in October of 2000, not that far back.
Yeah.
Kind of wild to think. I mean, it definitely started way back in a minute, but they lived until this century, at least one of them, so...
Yeah, and one came close, 95.
Yep.
That's our show. Thanks, as always, for listening. Thanks for keeping us in the Good Pods Top 100 each and every week. Love getting that email.
Yes.
Join our Facebook group, moderated by our own Laura Williams, who moderates the weekend chats in there as well. Thanks go to our sound engineer, Blue Bose. And thanks also go out to Bill Barrett, Behrendt. Bill is the man who does our theme music. He's a musician, so if you need a project completed musically or someone to perform at an event, Bill's your guy.
Hit him up.
You can reach him at billbarrett@sbcglobal.net. Also, thanks go out to Paige Elmore, formerly of the Reverie Crime podcast. In addition to the 100 or so episodes of that she's left us, she is also a Canva addict who has combined that with some of her own
Arthur's artwork.
Our own Arthur's artwork to create some logo art. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you, Paige.
Also, thanks to Aaron Gnurk of the Big Dumb Fun Show, who continues to promote us locally. Thank you, Aaron. Join us next week as we look into the life of Boudica. And I may not be saying her name quite right. It might be Boudica.
Ooh.
But
either way, awesome.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.